Fazza's 60-year-old queen, the woman who taught him to love. They called her the woman time forgot. Yet in her presence, even time seemed to pause and listen. Her silver hair shimmered like desert moonlight, her smile calm as the sea at dawn. And somewhere between her grace and her silence, the crown prince of Dubai, Fazza, found something he had never known. Before, peace. It began quietly, like all fateful stories do. She wasn't from his world of gold and ceremony. She came from the hidden corners of life, one of those souls who had lived deeply, loved fiercely, and lost more than words could tell. When she first met him, she didn't bow. She simply looked into his eyes as if seeing not a prince, but a man. He was 37 then, adored by millions, followed by the world's eyes. But inside, his heart was restless, haunted by the emptiness fame could never fill. And she, at 60, was beyond the illusions of beauty and wealth. Her strength was carved by years, her kindness tempered by storms. Their first conversation happened under the soft glow of a Dubai sunset. Fazza had come to see an art exhibition, one that showcased forgotten poets of Arabia. She was there as a curator, reciting verses of love that had survived centuries. When she spoke, her voice held the rhythm of wind across dunes, and her words brushed his soul like sand meeting tide. "You speak as if you've seen love," he told her that evening. "I have," she replied with a knowing smile. "It's never young, never old. It just is." Something in that answer stayed with him. He, the poet prince, suddenly found himself speechless. For years he had written of love, its beauty, its ache, its unreachability. But here was someone who lived it without needing to explain it. In the weeks that followed, Fazza returned again and again to her quiet world. Sometimes he would find her surrounded by books, other times teaching children the forgotten art of letter writing. She would tease him for his royal seriousness, calling him my young dreamer. And slowly, something changed in him. She didn't teach him how to love through romance or desire. She taught him through presence, through listening, through stillness. She showed him that love wasn't in grand gestures or perfect verses, but in small silences where two souls simply understand each other. He once asked her why she never sought fame for her wisdom. "Because love doesn't ask for applause," she said softly. "It asks for truth." The world would never understand their bond. To them, it wasn't about age or titles or even names. It was about timing. She came into his life not as a lover, but as a mirror. Through her, he saw what all his poetry had been trying to say. Sometimes she would read his verses aloud, her voice trembling slightly on lines about longing and loss. And every time, he'd feel something awaken within him, a kind of love that was both humble and divine. The palace whispered. The world speculated. Who was the older woman always seen? Rumors began to ripple through Dubai's golden corridors like whispers carried by the desert wind. Who was she? The elegant older woman who had caught the prince's attention? Some said she was a retired artist. Others believed she was a spiritual teacher. But none truly knew the truth that only Fazza and she shared. A truth woven not in scandal, but in serenity. For Fazza, every meeting with her felt like entering another world. In her presence, he was no longer the crown prince, no longer the poet with the world at his feet. He was simply a man, bare, human, learning what love looked like when stripped of glamour and expectation. She lived quietly on the outskirts of Dubai, in a house surrounded by palm trees and white jasmine. When he visited, there were no guards, no cameras, no signs of royalty, only the smell of Arabic coffee and the sound of her laughter echoing through the courtyard. He would often find her reading. "You read more than you speak," he teased once. "And you speak more than you listen," she replied gently. "That's why you write, to balance what you lose in words." Her wisdom disarmed him. In a life filled with people who flattered and agreed, she was the only one who dared to correct him. But it wasn't rebellion, it was affection, the kind that came from seeing beyond his crown into his soul. As the months passed, Fazza began to change. His poems grew deeper, less about desire, more about understanding. His eyes softened. Even his friends noticed. One evening, his closest aide asked him directly, "Your Highness, they say she's too old for you. What could you possibly learn from her?" Fazza smiled faintly. "More than I ever learned from the young." That answer, though quiet, carried centuries of wisdom. But not everyone shared his peace. The palace advisors whispered warnings about image and reputation. The media began to chase shadows, linking him with stories that painted the older woman as mysterious and manipulative. For the first time, the poet prince faced a storm not of words but of judgment. He visited her one evening, visibly troubled. The sunset was crimson that day, its light heavy and haunting. "They talk too much," he said, his voice low. "They think I've lost sense, that I'm blind to the world." She looked at him and smiled sadly. "Let them talk. The world fears what it doesn't understand. If they saw love the way we see it, they'd be silent." Her calmness melted his unrest. She poured tea, her hands steady, her movements graceful. "Tell me," she said softly, "why do you write poetry?" He thought for a long moment. "Because it's the only way I can tell the truth." "Then write the truth about me," she said. "Not as the woman they see, but as the soul you know." That night, Fazza returned to his palace and wrote one of his most profound poems. A poem not about romance, but revelation. It spoke of age as a crown of wisdom, of love as something beyond touch or time. The next morning, he published it under one line of dedication. The poem spread across Dubai like perfume carried by the wind. People quoted his words in cafes, on social media, in royal gatherings. Yet, while admirers praised its depth, few knew the woman who had inspired it, or the silence that followed. For days, Fazza didn't see her. Her jasmine-scented courtyard remained quiet, her phone unanswered. Something inside him felt uneasy, as if the desert itself had stopped breathing. Then one evening, a letter arrived, sealed in gold. Her handwriting delicate and familiar. "My dear dreamer, you have given my heart a song I never thought I'd hear again. But I must go now. The world around you is not kind to women like me. You are meant to love the world, not hide from it. Do not look for me. Just remember what I taught you. Love must make you freer, not heavier. Your older friend always." He read it again and again, his hands trembling. Every word cut deep, every silence louder than thunder. She was gone. For weeks he wandered through her absence. He visited her empty home, the echo of her laughter haunting the walls. On the old wooden table lay her books, her letters, and a single framed photograph of her younger self, standing beside a man who looked strikingly familiar. It was his late grandfather, Sheikh Rashid. The revelation hit him like lightning. She hadn't just been a passing figure in his story. She had been part of his family's history. Years ago, before Fazza was even born, she had been a close friend and spiritual guide to his grandfather, a woman who once helped shape the moral compass of Dubai's earliest leaders. No wonder her words carried such power. No wonder she understood the world with both tenderness and truth. She was not merely older in age, she was older in soul. The palace archives confirmed it later. She had served as an advisor in educational reform, then retired into quiet life after his grandfather's passing. Her name was Amira al-Saba. Few remembered her now, but those who did spoke of her with deep reverence. Fazza felt the desert inside him ache. He realized then that she had not come to stay, she had come to awaken. One evening, he returned to the dunes where they first met, carrying one of her favorite books, an anthology of ancient Arabic poems. The horizon burned with fading gold as he whispered her favorite verse into the wind. When love arrives, it teaches you what words cannot. When it leaves, it teaches you what silence means. That night, he wrote his final poem for her, a poem that would become legend. She came to me not as youth or beauty, but as light that sees the unseen. Her hair was silver, her eyes the sea, and her soul my home between worlds. If love were a teacher, she was my lesson. If peace were a crown, she made me wear it. When the poem was published, Fazza refused interviews, refused to name her. He simply said, "She was the woman who reminded me that love has no face, no age." Courtyard filled with jasmine. The memory of that 60-year-old queen lived on, in poems, in